Hello, welcome to this special episode of Industry Voice. Today we have Steve Anderson with us. Steve, how are you?
Jeff, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Great. So our audience are from everywhere, InsurTech insurance community, and you have kind of been in both sides of the world, and I'm excited to have you on the show today, and I'd like to talk about your company and your companies you have worked with and built in the past. And also your book, you have written books, and I'd love to hear all about it. So I'm gonna turn the mic over to you and tell us about your life and your
Okay,
career
I
and
was going to
everything you've
say,
done
so
in the
where do we
insurance world.
start? I've been around a long time. So let me give you kind of short background. Um, been in the independent agent industry system um, literally since the late 70s. So I got my first license to sell insurance in 1978. Worked at for my father-in-law in his independent agency. So that's how I got in the industry. And I always like to say, insurance is like quicksand. You stick your toes in and it never lets you go. And my technology bent actually really started even back then. So at his agency, and this was in the Washington, D.C. area, I brought in our first in-house agency management system. So this was about 1982. And again, we can talk about history of the systems at that point. Um, they were not PC based. They were many computers, and the system we ended up buying and installing hasn't been around for a long time, called EBS, or Engineered Business Systems. And that's kind of where I got my first fingers on computers. So I was responsible for buying it, installing it, running it, figuring out how to maximize it, all of that kind of stuff. Left my father-in-law's agency well, let's see, I was there 13 years, so late 80s, early 90s. And again, a lot of technology stuff was going on at that point. So kind of the transition from mini computers to desktop PCs to network computing, all kinds of stuff happening in the 80s. Ended up moving to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, did consulting for a little while, and then met two gentlemen who owned an independent agency there, and so became a producer. So built a book of business in the 90s, and also got very involved with technology in that agency, which is one of the reasons I wanted to work with them. Lots of things we tried. I think the thing that really put the agency on the map, at least, and really helped me get some visibility was we began scanning and storing digitally all of our paper files in 1992. So for the industry, very early. I won't say we were the first, but we certainly were among the first independent agencies that were taking those steps. Long story about how we figured that out and what happened. Fast forward through the 90s, ended up deciding I liked the technology side of things. So left that agency in 99, started my own consulting firm helping independent agencies with technology. And again, management systems, document management. That's when websites were starting to make some splash that agents were being told they needed websites. So fast forward into the early 2000s, and then kind of did that on my own, mostly independent, few contractors, but just worked with agencies, did a lot of speaking around the industry and association meetings, et cetera, CICs, those kinds of things, primarily around technology, office efficiency, those kinds of things. And then about 5 years ago, I was approached by a couple of state association executives that were trying to figure out how to help their members with technology. Associations really didn't do a very good job of that. They didn't know, they didn't have the background or the understanding. And so we started, and so the question was, would you be able to help? And I said, yes. let's talk about it at least. So that started a process of figuring out, okay, what would something look like for state associations to help their members with technology? So that ended up being Catalyt, a company I co-founded, along with ended up being 7 Big I State Association investment partners. So that company is growing. I was CEO up until earlier this year when I stepped aside from that role. Still am co-founder, still do kind of strategy, content, those kinds of things to help continue the momentum. And then in the midst of all of that, I did write a book.
Tell us
I'm going
about.
to take a breath now and let you kind of
So
go
I
ahead.
have I have two monitors, and I'm just staring at other monitor. Going through your LinkedIn. Obviously it's very accomplished. There's a lot of things there, and you kind of breeze through it in 5 minutes. Tell us about your approach with Big I, and some of the audience don't know what does Big I do, who are they, and how'd you get connected with them?
So, okay, Big I, Independent Insurance Agents of America, long known as the Big I, one of the two largest independent agent associations. So there's IIABA, the national organization, and then every state has their state association that's affiliated with the national. So state Big I's for do conventions, do training sessions, etc. The other is the PIA, the Professional Insurance Agents. So those are the two primary independent agent associations. I've done work with both over the years, literally speaking at conventions, doing CE courses, helping technology, understand what's going on. And so 3 state execs approached me. We're trying to figure out how they could better help their members with technology because their members were saying, we need help. That's one of our biggest areas that we need help with. So, that's kind of how that grew. Now, Catalyt has also partnered with the national Big I, as well as, and I don't remember the exact number, but let's say about 26 or 27 state associations. So we provide our services to those members of those state associations, as well as the help with the national initiatives around technology, insurtech, accelerators, right? All the stuff now in kind of the insurtech world.
I have a lot of curious questions.
Go ahead.
So we'll get to your book in a second, but
Okay.
well, when you first built Catalyst, right?
Mhm.
What do you think at that time, was that 2018, that independent agent were challenged with the most in terms of transitioning to technology? Thank you for watching this video. Now a quick message from our sponsor, Mav.
Thanks, Jeff. I want to let you all in on a secret that top producing agencies don't want you to know about. If you're in P&C insurance, you know firsthand how much you're getting squeezed by your call center. It's becoming less predictable and less economically profitable to scale. But here's the thing. The top producing agencies making over $100 million are not running their leads through a human-based call center. They're running them through an AI expert like Mav to qualify, quote, and hand deliver the highest intent qualified leads to your agents. Mav takes care of the back and forth, having unlimited 24/7 conversations with your leads that are personal and relevant so you can scale to the moon. Ready to ditch your call center and 10x your agency? We're giving the listeners of InsurTech's $15,000 worth of credit to try Mav. Head to hiremav.com/insurtechs to claim this offer.
One of the things Catalyt did pretty much out of the gate when we first started was an assessment. And so we ask all our members when they sign up and actually annually to do our tech assessment. And so that's something I had used over the years and again, refined it and updated it, which gives that agency actually a score in 5 areas that indicates how well they're currently using technology. And then we provide suggestions on how what they could do next or how could they improve their technology. So I think the questions, and this has been pretty consistent, literally over many years, kind of the two big issues agencies are facing are getting the most out of the technology they have. And for most agents, that's an agency management system, maybe a marketing platform, maybe a website, but the AMS is kind of the core platform that a lot of most agencies use. The second issue is staffing. How do I find staff? And I believe that the staffing issue, technology has a lot to help agents with. And certainly currently with the generative AI and all of that, which we can go more into if you want, but finding staff, and traditionally agents hire staff versus outsourcing or using some services that have the staff, et cetera. So that's a whole area that agents continue to need help with understanding how does this work, and even the day-to-day questions of, hey, this platform doesn't communicate with this platform. How do we work them together? How do we have a cohesive, what we now call a tech stack, right? All of the components that an agency needs in order to be effective, both in sales and in service.
You said we could go into that in a minute on the generative AI.
Yes.
Are
Well,
you watching?
you're
Are you
leading the
watching?
question, so.
Are you watching the trends that's happening?
I have done a deep dive into AI, and this has been longer than 2 years now. We're actually, this month is the second anniversary of the Open AI Chat GPT launch. But even before that, there were a lot of indications. Mostly we talked about natural language processing, some other iterations of earlier iterations of what now we kind of generically call AI. I'm a bit more focused on the generative AI right now because I think that will have, in fact, I'm pretty convinced that will have a pretty significant impact on agency operations. And there's a lot there. It's developing rapidly. Um, Even in our own surveys internally at Catalyst, most agents have heard something about it, but don't understand how it might be able to help them in their operation. And I would say one of the trends we're seeing, so one of the things we do at Catalyst is we actually, I believe, have the largest universe of what we call solution providers, vendors, that have something that could help independent agents. So we have 28 categories of technology. We have lists of who's the providers of solutions in those different categories. And so one of the things we're seeing, in fact, we just created earlier this year a new category around AI because there are so many now new startups that are focusing on AI. And one of the things we really work hard at is understanding what they're providing, meaning, is this AI as a marketing label, or is this truly something they've built into the product that does something different? So AI washing is kind of the term that's used for everybody has to have AI. I mean, that's just from a marketing perspective, but is it truly something that is different and that can help agents? And I think there are many actually, that do have some real interesting stuff to offer. So that was a long rambling answer to your question, but yes, I believe AI. I am in the camp. I would say a couple things. The camp of I was around when the internet, started growing, late 90s. My first website domain, steveanderson.com, I registered in 1996, and I was a little late to the party at that point. I believe what we're experiencing now is faster and more significant than the internet at that time. And again, we've seen what happened with the internet. I think we'll see that, but accelerated faster. So I believe it is. Are there problems? Are there all kinds of stuff? Absolutely. We'll figure it out. And I think agents that aren't playing with this stuff will regret it in the future. Oh, so I won't say they're missing out because, you know, agents are remarkably resilient, but the more they can embrace it now, the more they can be ahead of the game. And there are a handful of agents that are doing that and doing some really interesting things. So at Catalyst, that's what we try and do, is stay ahead of those trends, help agents understand them, give them the tools they need in order to be successful.
Yesterday, I saw a post in my newsfeed on LinkedIn. It says in 5 years, 99% of all activities in mortgage industry will be replaced by AI and bots.
Mhm. I
I
think that might be a little aggressive, but I've been wrong before. So, but I
I
do
just
think
thought that
it
was
will be
such a big
significant.
statement.
Yeah, that's a
It
big
was one of
statement.
those big statements that, make you pause and just sit there and stare at it.
Yep. And the thing I always emphasize is this is human augmentation. This is not human replacement. You know, AI right now isn't replacing humans, and I don't anticipate it will. That's not what I'm talking about, but it certainly, and my friend Ryan Deeds used this phrase that I use now all the time, it will help remove soul-sucking tasks CSRs, account executives do every day that they're just think as part of their jobs, but don't need to be. And I allowing them to be able to actually make more human connection, not less.
Do you think the biggest industry that will challenge is the BPO industry?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I do. And I do see again another shift, right? So they've been around a while, you know, providing people to do some of the tasks, the remote, you know, the not the remote, the repetitive tasks that happen in an agency. The big one right now is policy checking. And so that's been a big thing that the BPO industry has done for independent agents. Great task, great, needs to be done. Get it off the plate of the individual, let somebody else do it. And I have seen several examples of really pretty fantastic tools that do that policy checking. That is something that natural language processing does really well at and allows the agency then, and even so policy checking, certificate, so contract review, two big areas that are huge time sucks that those are two easy examples where this technology is significantly helping and reducing the amount of time agencies spend. And for the certificate, reducing E&O, for the policy checking, reducing E&O potential by not highlighting where the changes are.
Some interesting stats online. I just put in insurance BPO industry size. Take a guess what's the annual number?
Revenue or,
Yeah, revenue.
gosh, it's got to be big. I mean, I'm thinking of some of the providers out there now. Resource Pro, Protref, certainly for the larger brokers, for the smaller, you know, a whole bunch of others. And again, I think if they're not learning how to use these tools to streamline their operation to lower costs for agencies, that will be a problem.
It is 7.9 billion in 2022 and projected to reach 24.6 billion in 2032.
Yep. Makes sense.
And I hope they're developing their own softwares, their own AIs, because
And I
they
know
need to
several
find a
are.
way.
I mean, I've seen demos of several of them that have now tools. And part of what's happening too is those tools reduce the cost. So it opens a new market for them for smaller agencies that typically couldn't afford or didn't have the volume, you know, that they needed for, and so they focused on the larger brokers. And now that's starting to move down to the smaller agencies, so they're getting the benefits of the time savings and the enhanced accuracy. And I think that's a great move.
So I see on your resume a lot of board members, a lot of board member resumes. Steve, like I'm sure there's other people out there who are specialized in, very intelligent on their skill set, trying to figure out how do I become a board member? And you, on your resume, you've been board member of multiple companies and still is. So how did you get approached by, these companies to become their board members? And tell us about that experience.
Um, Interesting. So I have to think about that a little bit. Most of it was me being approached by somebody else. And I would say, certainly now, one of the advantages I have is, and I have a long career in the industry. I'm well known amongst the independent agent, arena. And I would say most, it's typical that a new startup insurtech vendor will find me or be told they need to talk to me, at some point along their growth path. So that leads to conversations. I have a wide network, and so that leads to, can you advise us? I would say one of the problems with a lot of insurtechs, certainly if they're coming from the technology side and not the industry side, they don't understand independent agents. They don't understand the workflow. They see a problem, they think they can solve it, but not understanding the entire ecosystem. And that's certainly where I can bring, I've been around agencies, again, for a long time, 40 plus years, and know intimately what they do, how they do it, what their problems are, that can help a lot of companies looking to get into the space or looking to help grow, their idea, whatever it is.
What do you think they fall short on? Your first approach with them, you having an open conversation to get to know each other, and they're like, I want to build this tech, solution, blah, blah, blah. And then where do you see them falling short on the first conversation?
Not doing enough due diligence in agencies. That's not universal. I mean, some understand, they don't understand. I would say those coming from outside the US, which is a growing number, the insurance environment outside the US, be it Europe, Asia, Australia, is very different than the US environment, primarily because of the 50-state regulation. So they don't understand going in the complexity that in the US that has. So I think a better understanding of actually the industry is the downfall, and what the differences are between what they think they know and what the reality is.
That's a great answer. I will totally agree with that one. I think, the flow of distribution a lot of times is misunderstood of how insurance actually work.
Yep.
And
I'm not sure I fully understand it, so
I think you have a pretty good grip.
I might.
So, all right, we'll get to your book last because I'm very
Okay.
curious. You have 325,000 followers on LinkedIn.
Correct.
For someone in insurance, that doesn't happen very often. I see major carrier CEO don't have that size following. When did you grow this following? Thank you for all your support to our channel. Here is a quick word from our sponsor. Please click on the link below in the comment section to sign up for a demo with Traq AI.
What if your insurance sales conversations could work harder for you? Meet Traq, your AI-powered conversation intelligence partner. Traq automatically captures and analyzes every customer interaction, providing instant call summaries, risk analysis, and AI-driven coaching insights. Say goodbye to manual note-taking and hello to more selling time. Traq handles the admin work while you handle the revenue. Fully integrated with your favorite platforms. Plus, get custom AI analysis tailored to your unique business needs. Transform your sales team's performance with Traq. Visit Traq.ai today.
Click the link in the description below to schedule a demo with Traq today.
So the background story on that is I had been on LinkedIn. It is my primary platform and has been for quite some time. And out of the blue, and so this is an example of you produce content and you never know who's actually reading it.
Mhm.
So in 2013, I got an email from an editor at LinkedIn. And the email said, we're creating a new program called Influencers. It's an invitation only. And we'd like to know if you would like to be involved. I deleted the email thinking it was spam, but I kept thinking about it. So I went back, pulled it back out, did a little more research. So the guy who sent me the email was on LinkedIn. He was an editor. I mean, so I said, okay, this looks like it might be legit. So we set up a call. And I mean, my first question is, why me? How did you find me? And he didn't have an answer. He just said, he was writing in the financial, services industry, and he said, we came across your content and thought you'd be good for this program. So I did. I've been part of that. It's now changed from influencers to top voice. And as a top voice on LinkedIn, I get extra promotion. So, I get connection requests saying, I keep seeing you in my who to follow, or who to connect with feed and things like that. So early on, the influencers, got first access to the article publishing platform, which was brand new. And I don't remember what year that was. But so I started writing longer articles on that platform. That grew a following. And I continue to publish there. Now videos big on LinkedIn. So we typically get early access to all the new stuff. And so that just continues to grow. So I call it a fluke, and it really wasn't. It was just being visible online. The term I've always used is your internet presence. What does that look like? But
Yeah.
it's been a great time.
Storytelling is important. And then now let's get to the storytelling. You wrote a book.
I wrote a book.
What made you write that book?
It actually grew out of my work with agents. So a little longer bit of the story, I don't often tell, but an industry group, part of the national big I is ACT, Agents Council for Technology, which I've been involved with from its inception in one form or fashion. And ACT purpose is kind of the 30,000-foot view of technology for agents and how to help them. They had different work groups on different topics. And one of the work groups I co-chaired was called The Changing Nature of Risk. And what we did in that work group is we literally made a list of all the new technologies. And this was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. All the new technologies. Some of it was AI, some of it was smart home, some of it, a whole list of things. And we looked at that list and created a one-page executive summary about that emerging technology. What is it? How does it affect individuals? What do you know as a independent agency owner or staff? What do you need to know about this technology? And what are potential insurance implications of the technology that you might want to talk to your clients about? So we published those. I think we published 16 or 20. That started my head thinking, technology is changing so rapidly. And again, this is a few years ago, still the case, if not even more rapidly. Is the biggest risk agents face actually not taking enough risk? Because agents were like, have been like, what about, automated marketing or marketing automation, or why do I need websites, or internet leads are junk? I don't want those. All those hesitations instead of experimenting, testing, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And that led me to start researching different companies. And I first looked at companies that once were very successful and are no longer here, literally gone. And names Kodak, BlackBerry, Blockbuster, all those names that people talk about. And then I came across, I say now, of course, but I looked at Amazon, has been successful, continues to be successful. What's the difference? During that process, I came across the letters to shareholders that Jeff Bezos wrote. First one in 1997. His last one as CEO was 2020 when he stepped aside as CEO and became executive chairman. The book looks at 1997 through 2018. When I read those letters, one after the other, as a full narrative, I realized there were threads in the letters about how Amazon grew, what Bezos did to grow Amazon. Most shareholder letters from CEOs are fairly boring. They tout the company, here's our numbers, here's what we did. Bezos did some of that, but back to your point, he was and is a storyteller. And that's what caught my attention. So my first iteration wasn't even a book idea. It was just like, hey, this is really good stuff. So I created a one-page executive summary of each letter that had been published so far. I think it was probably through 2017, maybe. I don't remember now. And I did it as a PDF. Here's a great tutorial on how Amazon grew. Give me your name and email address and download this lead gen. That was that purpose. So as I was finishing it, my wife is an editor. She's been part of the book publishing business for a very long time. I sent it to her. I said, take a look at this, help edit this. Does things make sense? Because I really trust her. She got it. She looked at it. She sent it to the founder of the publishing company she works for, still does. And they both immediately came back and said, this is a book. And I went, oh shit, I don't know how to write a book. Now, I've written articles for years. I had a regular column in Rough Notes for like 10 years. I've written a lot, but there's a really big difference between 1,000 or 1,500 word article and what ended up being a 65,000 word book. So I started, and Karen said she'd help. And so again, long story about the publishing piece of it, but we ended up publishing the book in the fall of 2019. And surprisingly, at least to me, it ended up on the Wall Street Journal and the USA Today bestseller list in the fall of 19. And then it's been translated into 20 languages.
If someone doing scorekeeping of all the insurance industry's people's books, what do you think your book will rank?
How to rank it? Sales, probably more than any. Foreign rights, foreign publishing. I don't know, but I don't know of any other industry book that has been published in foreign languages. And mine are like Vietnamese. The latest one was French. Chinese, both complex and simple. So Taiwan and mainland. Albania, Russia, Ukraine. Just crazy stuff. And it was no accident. In fact, if you haven't looked at the book, here's the cover. It helps having Amazon and Bezos on the cover of the book. People are curious. How did Amazon do it? So it sold well. It still sells. 5 years later, we're working on a revision. So kind of updating the book. And I have a an idea for a second book that I'm starting to work on. So
That's cool. I love to hear about it. I wish, that phone call that your wife made to you, you recorded and it was on FaceTime. I mean, when she, talked to her editor, her people from her book side, and then call you, say this is a book. If that was captured on a video, that would have been a great.
my initial reaction was, there's no way. And there were a lot, I mean, the book writing process was, excruciating is the word that comes to mind. It was hard. It was hard. It was hard. And again, her name's on the book because she had a significant impact on the quality of the book. Because what I said to her at that point was, I will try and write this book, but you have to promise me that you won't let a crappy book be published. It has to be a good book. And I think the evidence shows that it is. Again, I will say one of the questions I get in that story is, how'd it go writing a book with your wife? And we're still married. Actually, next year we'll celebrate our 50th anniversary. So
That's
we've been
amazing.
around together for a long time. And the reason it worked for us is I trust her 100% when it comes to writing book strategy. And so one of the things that's really key when you're writing a book is you want to take the reader and give them a reason to want to read the next chapter and not bail. And so there's a lot of intentionality to making that happen.
Does she have a book?
She has ghostwritten many. She has a couple that have been on the shelf that I'm encouraging her to.
You should encourage her to write
Yeah.
the book should call Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. It's a playoff, right? From
Yes.
Matrix and Jennifer,
What is it, Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
yeah, Mrs. Smith, and but Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, right?
There you go.
So, man, this was fun podcast. So you did a podcast for a little bit too, especially in the early days. I mean, 2018, podcast was still fairly new and definitely was new in the insurance industry. What made you stop?
Are you looking at the Digital Broker podcast? So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how to tell this story. So that podcast started, I did it with my co-host Ryan Deeds, and we did about 50 episodes. I did with Ryan about 50 episodes. It was sponsored by Indio. So now Indio is a online application company. They help clients fill out applications and streamline the process. Acquired by Applied. And we kind of did it on a handshake, no, contracts or anything like that. They paid for all the production, which is great. And they came to me, sent an email to me one day and said, "Hey, we need you to sign this agreement that all of the podcast content is ours." Fairly conversant in intellectual property protection. And as a consultant, those were all my ideas, and I wasn't going to sign those over to anybody. I actually ended up doing that because Catalyst then bought my IP on Mike Insurance Consulting and got paid for all of that, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really a good thing I didn't. And as a result of that, I could not be on the podcast anymore. So Ryan kept it going for a little while. I didn't remember how long. But at Catalyst, we really are thinking about doing a podcast on what I want to do. Back to the generative AI, I want to do a podcast specifically focused on AI in agencies. And at least in my head, the title is Hype to How. So I see a lot of conversations around AI and what agents can do, but not a lot of conversations around actually how to do it. And I want to demystify, because we are in the hype cycle, no question about it. And we're dipping into the trough now. It's going to come back. It has to. And I want to help agents understand what to do, how to do it, how to think about it, and how to leverage this technology to increase their revenue and customer satisfaction. So anyway, so a new idea keeps popping up, but as you know, doing a podcast is a commitment, especially if you want to do it long term.
Yes, going through it now. And,
Yes.
you know, it's but it's rewarding, but at the same time, it's challenging. And I've been on 32 podcasts before I was going to launch my own. And every single one I studied the host. Some are just really, really good and really bring out the best out of their guest. And after 2.5 years, I finally dive in and started my own podcast. But there was a lot of process. I took the time to appear on other people's podcasts and
Yep.
just listen to the podcast. I love YouTube. So there's sit down, those sit down conversations. Whether it's Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, I mean, those guys are at different level. They have a different production group, right?
Right.
And they interview some of the most interesting guests. So it's rewarding at the same time. It's really challenging. A lot of people think they can just step in, but
I think where the challenge is kind of after maybe 10 or 15 episodes. It's
yeah,
kind of like, okay, my initial ideas, now what do I do type thinking, right? And I think interview type podcasts, I really like. For the book, I've been on over 100 podcasts as a guest. And so kind of like you, I have learned, and some hosts are great, prepared, good questions, great conversation. Some hosts, I'm carrying the show, so it just depends. But it's a great medium. I think I don't think it's too late. I think it's continuing to grow. I actually, as we're recording this, the election just, happened. I think that is providing fuel for podcasts and a new media, right? Not the traditional legacy media that's maybe suffering a bit. So anyway, there's
I
random thoughts.
mean, just go back, look at the history of Trump and his team. If you look at the 2016, how they were first on Facebook, Twitter, and really took the platform and used it to project a voice. And 2020 was similar playbook as 2016, but 2024 long form podcast they just went all in on it.
Well,
And
3 hours on Rogan,
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
some people said it was Byron Trump's idea. Some people said, hey dad, they reenact the conversation. Hey dad, these are the lists of podcasts you got to go on. Bill Belichick podcast,
right.
Patrick Bet-David, and who really help both ways, right? Help the podcast grow, but at the same time, like it give authenticity to people because when you listen to someone for 3 hours, you kind of really get to know them, almost
Right.
like you're right there.
Yep.
And it's crazy to see that he innovated ways that political campaign wasn't doing that before. If you look at the spend on budget, it's crazy how he used that to his advantage.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think it just shows how media is changing, and
yeah,
I mean, change always happens, and keeping up. So anyway, but I won't get too political on this, but it was really interesting to watch those changes.
man, I think I can go for another hour, but we're trying to keep average episode at like an hour mark
All
because
right.
attention span falls off at 45 minutes. But thank you, Steve. I think I'm gonna have you come back on maybe, right before you release your next book, come back onto the episode and tell our audience about it. So
All right.
I'll go ahead and send you an intake form after this. And for our audience, make sure you go follow Steve Anderson on LinkedIn. And that is his primary platform that he's on.
Yep.
And be on the lookout for the next book.
Yeah, sounds great. Jeff, thanks for having me. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Steve.